month, I'm talking about freedom of thought. The whole year is around spirituality and action. You know, I think we're really good in New Thought at doing the spirituality for ourselves, for our own behalf. You know, but it's another thing when you take it outside the walls of the center, or out of your own, you know, from your own bedroom or whatever, to actually live it and be it out in the world. And we know we certainly have some challenges these days. So we're talking about freedom of thought, and last week I started with this conversation of being free to be, and this week we are doing part 2. So let's make sure my clicker is working. All right, this was the quote from the last talk that I personally really liked and enjoyed, from the late, great, wonderful Wayne Dyer, who said, authentic freedom is actually the freedom of knowing who you are, why you're here, your purpose in life, and where you're going when we leave here. Right, when you leave here. When we all leave here, because we're all leaving here. That's one of the things we all know, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that we don't like to talk about. It's something we don't like to acknowledge. But I think it is absolutely vital that each one of us grab hold of that idea, that our time here in this physical form is limited. Right? This physical experience for each one of us is going to end at one day. That is something that we all, each and every one of us, have in common. Now we know that there is a part of us also that's beyond the physical body, and we talk about that too, that awareness, that who we really are, that Wayne Dyer is talking about. And when you know that, when you know the truth about that, then you're free to live your life really fully. Right? When you know that there is an end time, and you know the truth of who you are, you can be who you are without fear. Steve Jobs said it this way. I actually have a whole quote from him. This comes from, y'all know who Steve Jobs is, right? Mm-hmm. So this was a quote from that really famous commencement address that he did. And it says, here's what he said, remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Now, how many of you know that's true?
Yes.
Right? And I worked for hospice for some years. Now, when people get that diagnosis, suddenly things become very clear of what's important and what to put in order. Remembering that, this is from him again, remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You're already naked. There's no reason for you not to follow your heart. Now, no one wants to die. Not even me. None of us wants to, right? None of us wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. Mm-hmm. And yet death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that's how it should be. Because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Yeah, it creates that clearing. Right? It creates a clearing. It's another great quote about this. Now, we're all on, if you're in here or if you're listening, it's because you're interested in this spiritual path. Right? You're interested in your own spiritual growth. And that, you know, another word for that is enlightenment, because that is kind of what we're all looking for, right? To be enlightened, to be light, to be lighter, to know some of the secrets of the universe. And Adyashanti says this, enlightenment is a destructive process. Now, some of us get on the spiritual path thinking that it's so that we can become something more, so we can be something different. But the truth is that you are already, and you already have within you everything that you need. Everything. What happens is that, you know, once we get past those young ages of our little ones running around, you know, life starts to happen. Right? And we start to believe things about ourselves, and people say things, and we have all of this conditioning that happens. And then as we get older, we start to realize, all of the BS we were told. and you start letting some of that stuff go. So this idea of enlightenment is really about letting go of all the stuff that isn't you, that doesn't serve you. And that's what he's saying, is enlightenment is a destructive process. It has nothing to do with becoming better or being happier. Enlightenment is the crumbling away of untruth. It's seeing through the facade of pretense. It is the complete eradication of everything we've imagined to be true. Right? We've been told a lot of stuff, and society and culture tells us a lot of things that are just not true and just don't serve us. And we're seeing more and more of that in a big way, I think, not just here in our country, but all over the world. And in the Bible it says this: do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good, so that you may prove what is that good and what is acceptable and the perfect will of God. Right? So we see it from many different traditions, right? The idea that we can be transformed, that we can be reborn, that we can come into something new by simply changing our minds. You don't have to move someplace else. You don't necessarily have to get a new job or change the relationship. It's about changing your mindset, very often in the same situation that you're in. But by changing that mindset, by getting a new perspective on it, everything can shift for you. Right? So here's the thing. Now all of that is about freedom, right? And freedom, we love to think we're free. We want to be free. But freedom itself is not free. Now, I'm not talking just about on the national scale. That seems like it's a phrase that's been coined, having to do with, if we want to defend our freedom, that we need to fight for it. I'm using that in a different context, although it refers as much to the macro, to the large situation, as it does to freedom within your own life. So we can apply these ideas in a lot of ways. So if freedom is not free, what does freedom require? What does it take? Number one, I don't think these are really in any particular order, but I'm going with this one as the first one, because freedom takes awareness. Freedom takes awareness. And that was why I invited you last week to look at the different areas of life, and I think I mentioned 6 different ones, to think about the places where you're not free. Right? You've got your physical body. Now that for me was an area of my life that I was not free to be for many years, as I carried an extra 100 pounds of weight. I still have extra 20, but it's a lot different now. It feels different. And I had to, at a point, be okay with carrying that extra pounds, those extra pounds, and not keep putting my happiness off to some time in the future, if or when I lose the weight. I had to get comfortable with me as I was, in my skin, with all of my, perceived flaws and whatever, because this is the body I got. This is what it is, right? So that was a place I was not free to be. Maybe your freedom or your lack thereof is in your relationships. I hope each and every person here has at least one soft place to go. Right? When life gets tough, when things are difficult, do you have at least one person that you can really be yourself with? Right? And if you don't have that, keep hanging out here. You'll find some people, because it is a really great, safe place. So freedom takes awareness of the places where you're not free to be. Look at those things. I have a couple more places I'm not free to be. Y'all are not free to be in my car. Because my car is a mess. And it really is a lack of freedom, and when my house is a mess, I feel not free to be. Like I can't have people just show up. I actually did a course. Anybody familiar with landmark education? Anyone here do landmark? It's a really intense work, and I did a lot of work with landmark, and there was one class where we had this assignment to clean up everything in our lives. That meant cleaning up your house, that meant cleaning up the car, that meant cleaning up, like taking care of any old library books that hadn't been returned. Make sure you do all your taxes. Make sure your checkbook is fully balanced all the time. Like cleaning up every area of your life. And it was really overwhelming. And there was a point in that process where I thought, my gosh, if I get all of this together, that's going to be the end of me, because what else would I have to do? Anybody else ever feel like that? Like if I really got my shit together, that would be it. What else could there be? So, but there's always something. There is always something else. And I think a lot of those things where we get stuck end up being distractions to us of the real reason that we're here. Right? So freedom takes awareness. And Stephen Covey, I love Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says this: every human has 4 endowments. We have self-awareness, conscience, independent will, and creative imagination. These give us the ultimate human freedom, and that is the power to choose, to respond, and to change. Right? So freedom requires awareness of where you're free to be and where you're not. Freedom also takes courage. It really does take courage. And Emerson says it this way: to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Can anyone relate to that?
Yeah.
Does anyone ever feel like the guy with the pink shorts? It's just doesn't fit in. And you know, it's okay to not fit in. I did a series on that, back in 2018, a whole series around this, belonging versus fitting in. And to belong, you have to be willing to not fit in. To really belong means being authentic to yourself, to knowing who you are, and then you can belong anywhere. Right? So freedom takes courage. It takes courage to step out and not necessarily do what the crowd is doing. Some of those people who are just going through the motions of life are afraid to take the leap, to do something different. And they may be trying to give you advice. But that's why you need to know who you are. That's why the most important thing is for knowing what is important to you. What are your values? What's your compass? And it may be different than somebody else's. And that's okay. So freedom, we said freedom takes awareness. It takes courage. Freedom takes responsibility and accountability. Both. This reminds me of my favorite quote from Viktor Frankl. Y'all remember? Mm-hmm. I've said it so many times here, right? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. Go on. And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in that response lies your freedom and your growth. I love that because it answers so many things, right? How many of us have things that happen?
Oh, yeah.
We all have stuff that happens. Now, between the thing that happens and what you do about it, sometimes the space is this big, and sometimes, and maybe those are the moments actually where you need to tell yourself, or you need to tell the people around you, I need to take a step back for a moment. I need to take some space so that I can actually respond, take responsibility rather than reacting, right? Responsibility is the ability to respond. And part of the spiritual path is understanding how to respond and not just react. Right? So freedom takes the ability to respond, and then it also takes accountability. I mean, that's your key to freedom. Accountability is saying, I know what is mine, and I take full responsibility for that. And when I screw up, I make it right. I make it right. And there is your accountability, as opposed to saying, well, it's somebody else's fault. Whenever it's somebody else's fault or somebody else is doing, what can you do about that?
Nothing.
Zero. Nothing. Nothing. So the phrase I love to say is we don't should on people. We don't should on ourselves. We don't should on other people. It's just really not polite. What you can do, though, instead of shoulding on yourself and other people, is you say, I could. I could. And there is the responsibility. I could. I may not be able to change all of that, but here's something that I can do. And there is your freedom. Again, because you're the one that's taking back the control of what you can do. So freedom takes responsibility and accountability. I love this one because we don't think about this often. Right? We think freedom is free. That means I can do whatever I want to do. But freedom really and truly takes discipline and commitment. How so, you might ask? So I remember watching, I think it was like 2020 or 60 Minutes or one of those shows years and years ago. And there was this young girl who was a piano virtuoso. She was about 14 years old, and she was playing Carnegie Hall and all these great big, venues. And she was being interviewed, and the person, the interviewer, whatever, or the kid was saying, there are people that tell me all the time, I would give anything to do what you do. I would give anything to do that. And she said, in all of her infinite 13 or 14-year-old wisdom, she says, I knew that they wouldn't. People say that I would give anything, but they really wouldn't, because I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I practice for so many hours, and then I go and I swim and I do, she had this whole litany of things that she did, and then she would go to school, and then she would come back and practice some more. I mean, this kid was practicing 2 or 3 hours of piano a day. She said if somebody else wants to do that, they could do it, and they could probably be as good as me. But how many people are going to put in that kind of time and commitment and discipline? Right? So when you put in the time and the discipline, you're then free to play the piano. I'm not free to play piano like that. Right? My husband plays tennis because he practices every day. He is free to hit the really good shots and have a really good game. How many other things are like that? Right? It's like being free to be in my own skin, to feel okay standing up in front of the room in my own body. It took discipline, and it took the commitment, right, of doing the right diet, of doing the exercise, not just when I felt like it, but every day, because that was the commitment. So are you committed to your own freedom? Are you committed to being able to live in a way that is yours and nobody else's? Living fully, doing the thing that you came here to do with the passion and the joy and all of that that's within you. It's not just going to happen. It doesn't just happen. It actually is going to take some discipline and commitment on your part. Right? The discipline of some kind of spiritual practice. And that's the next thing, I think. Because freedom takes practice. Freedom takes practice. How many of you have some kind of spiritual practice? All right, so that's one of the things as you are on this path and you want to grow into being the best you that you can be, take some time for yourself. Take some time in the quiet. Take some time to commune with the divine, whatever that feels like for you. Whether it's listening to music or walking in the woods or doing that holotropic breathing. Boy, we had a gentleman here on Tuesday for the conscious breathing workshop, and I found a really new cool way to meditate. A really cool way that just drops you right down. Take 15 minutes of that a day. You don't need to take another pill the rest of the day. And what I think that practice does, a practice of quiet, a practice of silence, of meditation, I think my theory is that it takes that space, right, between the thing that happened and what you do about it, and it somehow makes that space bigger. It makes you more aware that it's there, so you're not reacting as quickly to things, right? So take the time for some kind of spiritual practice, whatever that is. It's just imperative for your growth that you do something like that, and it doesn't have to be what anybody else is doing. Some time for prayer, some time for reflection. Make it in the morning when you get up or before you go to bed at night. How many of y'all brush your teeth before you go to bed at night? So take some time after you brush your teeth or while you're brushing your teeth to just go through your day and think, is there anything that I need to release? All right, so you clean your mind just like you clean your body or you clean your teeth. Clean your mind. Is there anything I need to forgive? Is there anything for me to let go of? Right? Because all that stuff, I did a talk where I had everything, I was putting it in a big bag. All those slights and all those things you need to hold on to. Right? So-and-so said this to me, and this one did that to me, and I'm ticked off at this other one, and you keep putting all this stuff in your backpack, and you're carrying all this stuff around, and before you know it, you're literally weighted down with all this stuff that you're carrying. And what purpose? For what? Half those people don't even know you're still pissed off. Let it go. Let it go. Get over it. Right? Freedom takes practice. Freedom is not given to us by anyone. We have to cultivate it. We have to cultivate it, and it's daily. It's daily. That's part of that, again, the discipline, the commitment. You got to do it every day. That's why my house is a mess, because I don't clean it every day. It takes commitment. So I'm in this. We all have different stuff. Right? All of us have different things. That happens to be my thing of late. How are you hearing that, right? So that's our thing. My not free to be. Right? So we want it takes practice, it takes discipline. What's the next thing? The big one. The big one, freedom takes surrender. Freedom takes surrender. And that's the scary part, right? When you're standing on the edge of what you know and what you've been doing, and even if it's not working entirely, whatever this way of life is that you've been doing that's not working, it's familiar, right? Whether it's the relationship or the job that you're not wanting to leave, and maybe you're miserable, but at least you know this misery, right? You don't want to let go of it because it's familiar and not knowing what's in front of you. What is this other thing that this freedom that's calling to me? And it's scary. It can be really scary. It can be really scary. But when you go back to that first idea of knowing the truth of who you are, of knowing that there is a part of you, that awareness that has always been here, that consciousness, right? It's always been here. And it will always be here. And it is part of that greater, grander picture, that bigger divinity. And when you understand that, it's so much easier to let go. Because you know that you're going to be caught. You know that you're going to be okay. You know that life is continually carrying you to the next best thing. No matter what it looks like in the moment. How many of you have been through some stuff? Right? Really painful, probably hurtful things that when you came out of it and came out on the other side, you could look back and say, wow, look at what I learned. Look at who I became. Look at the courage. Right? So, is it good? Is it bad? Who knows? Who knows? Actually, you decide. You're the one who decides if whatever you're going through is good or bad. So, I'm going to suggest that you give it a good label. Say it's all good. Say it's all good. Everything turns out okay in the end. Y'all know that quote? I use that one a lot too, right? Everything's okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. It's not the end. Just keep on trucking. Keep going. Right? We say we go through the fire. You're going through the fire. Don't stand in the middle of it. Don't stop your feet. And why is this happening to me? No, walk the heck out. Get out. Get out on the other side of it. Right? We go through the fire. You don't want to stay in it. You go through the drama. You're not going to stay in it. So stop talking about it. Stop letting it swirl. This is what we do, right? We call it venting. And we swirl in our stuff, right? Surrender. Just let it go. Just let it go. Right? And when you keep it before you that, remember, my time is limited. I don't know how much time it's going to be. It could be, well, I'm way past 25. I mean, for some people it's 25 years, for some it's 55, for some it's 105. We don't know what that is. We do know there is a time frame. We don't know what the time is, but we also have probably an infinite number of choices that we can make. And every choice you make is going to take you in a particular direction. Right? So start being aware. Pay attention to your life and what's going on. And if I make this decision, right, between stimulus and response, take some time in that space in between. And look and say, if I make this decision, it may take me this way. If I make this decision, it may take me that way. But then you get into your spiritual practice. And you ask Spirit to show you. And when you ask, what happens? You get the answers. You get the answers. You may not like the answer you get. You may not think it's the right one. And sometimes Spirit is sarcastic, and sometimes it has a sense of humor. And sometimes you're going, no freaking way. No, I'm not doing that. You know, but it keeps coming back around. You know, and it's a lot easier to just do it willingly than to get shoved or get smacked with that, what do you call the 2x4, the spiritual 2x4 that you get upside the head. Yeah, that makes you leave the job, or it makes you leave the relationship, or whatever it is. Meanwhile, you knew for months and months or longer that you needed to get out of that situation and let it be. Because we get comfortable and we're afraid of that surrender. But again, if you know who you are and you know where you're going, it's a lot easier to do that. It's a practice. It's a practice. I love that image, and I use that intentionally because it reminded me of just the immensity of the universe and life. And that all of this stuff has been going on, and it will continue to go on. The world has been here for a long time. And it will be here long after I'm gone. The universe, the stars, and there is a power, there is a presence, there is a something that keeps it all going. Before you and I were ever here, we don't have to make things happen. We just allow. We allow. And that's part of the journey of knowing who you are and taking the time in the silence and the quiet so that you can hear the answers. Right? So we surrender to your greatest good. So there's a cost, right? I said there's a cost for freedom. There's also a cost for not stepping into that freedom, right? There's a cost that comes with not being who you came here to be. This comes from the Gospel of Thomas. How many of you have heard of that? The Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. There was a whole set of works, of writings that didn't make the final cut of the Bible. And this is one of them. The Gospel of Thomas was found in the 1940s, I think 1949 or something like that, with all these scriptures. And this was one of them. And these words are attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas. He says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you don't bring forth will destroy you." Okay, I'll say it again. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. I tried to think of a good illustration for this, and probably the best one, thank you for this, Grady, is one of my dearest friends. We met through Centers for Spiritual Living, and I can tell this story because he's told it here before. His name is Ed, and Ed is a minister as well. And Ed is just as gay as the day is long. He's one of those people. He's very flamboyant. He's extremely self-expressed. That's a great way to say it. And nobody would ever wonder. You're very clear. Ed is a gay man. And I know him now as this. But now to hear Ed's story and how he came out is just, it floors me. To think, now this man, I have a gay cousin that I've known was gay since he was a little guy. He was 3 years old, and we knew that he was, that he liked boys, and that was okay. It was okay. So Ed grew up in a time that's a little older than me, and he grew up where it was absolutely not acceptable, and he did everything he could to play it straight. He got married. He had a kid. He became a teacher. He did all the stuff that he was supposed to do, and he was absolutely miserable, almost suicidal. It was drugs, it was alcohol, it was all kinds of things that really were killing him ultimately, because he had this way of being. He knew inside of him who he was. Maybe he didn't always know. I don't know. Maybe that was a gradual awakening. But there was this part of him that could not be expressed because of society, because of culture, because of so many things. And he almost took his own life. And thankfully, a friend invited him to come to a Center for Spiritual Living. And he sat in the back of the room furious that they tricked him into coming to a church. But whatever the message was, it started to open him up, right? And to remind him that there are other ways to be, and what if I really could be who I am? And now when I think of Ed, and I think of who he is, and how fully self-expressed he is, and what a beautiful, joyous light this man is, to think about what it took to condense all of that so that he could be what he thought he was supposed to be, what he thought society wanted him to be, or his family, that he couldn't truly be himself, it almost brings me to tears. In fact, it has. I think about the pain that he must have been through, must have gone through. And how many of us, even people sitting in here, are in pain right now because of not being able to express and to be who they are? Because of all that stuff that happens in life, right? The drama, the trauma, the this, the that, the expectations, the shoulding that we do on ourselves and that other people have done to us. Right? So we are all called to be free. The world is a much better place now because Ed Tansey lives as Ed Tansey. Right? The world is a better place, I hope, because I'm being who I am. The world is a better place because each and every one of you have had the courage to step into your authentic selves in some way or another. And it's a life work. We keep doing it. Maybe you haven't fully arrived, but there's time to practice. Right? I don't know if any of you have gotten the diagnosis, but if you haven't, just keep on, keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. I guess that brings me to our affirmation. And I'm